Hey there, I'm Sully, and as always, welcome to the Gun Club. Alrighty, tonight I've got a few stories we're going to start off with. We're dual streaming here live on Rumble and on YouTube. Looks like both of the streams are going out well. It is February 27th, Tuesday night. We're going to cover a few stories on both platforms, and then we're going to be breaking off for a little bit of a Rumble exclusive segment. Now, when we go to the Rumble exclusive segment, it's not throwing any rocks at YouTube. It's just sometimes I may not be politically correct enough, or perhaps it's just YouTube doesn't understand my feelings on things. And so, in order for me to be my warm and cheery self, we're going to go Rumble exclusive on the end of the show. Just want to give everyone a heads up now. If you're interested in checking out our Rumble channel, here it is. You can find it right here on the bottom. It's rumble.com/C, the Gun Club. Also got our locals and our email on there in case anybody is interested in joining up on any of that. The locals is free. We post a lot of documents on there. We've begun using it as a document repository of sorts. That way we can, when I make claims or when I say something or we have a police report or an incident report, I can post it up on there with links to it so that way you can check it out and look at it for yourself. It's not that I'm saying it, it's the real deal. Anyway, as we go onwards and upwards, the first case we're going to get into is the one that happened up in Burnsville, Minnesota. Now, if you're not familiar with Burnsville, Minnesota, it happened a weekend or so ago. Law enforcement was called to a domestic at about 1:50 in the morning. They arrived to find the suspect barricaded with his wife and seven, count them, seven children in the house. He was rather heavily armed. We ended up with two police officers shot and killed, as well as one firefighter paramedic killed who was on their SWAT team. He was attempting to render aid to one of the downed officers at the time he was killed. Now, this was a tragedy, of course, small community, two officers and a paramedic killed. Definitely a big, bad issue that we've got some serious problems with. But let's dig in a little bit deeper and look at some of the backstory. Well, the suspect, he was a 38-year-old male. He did have a criminal record. As a matter of fact, he pled guilty to second-degree assault with a dangerous weapon back in 2008, where he tried to hit somebody with a large rock and pull a knife on them as a result of a verbal argument. He also had two previous domestic violence complaints. Unfortunately, those had not been followed up on. From what I was gathering, the original complaints were filed, but the victims never arrived in court, so things never got really pushed anymore on that. But when you look at the overall picture, it seems to be kind of a volatile individual. Now, in 2020, he actually petitioned to have his gun rights restored, his firearms rights, his right to own a firearm. He tried to get it back. Now, why would he try to get it back? Well, at the time, he stated that he had grown up a lot and learned and become more grounded and was a family man now and was really trying to live a better life and wanted to be able to, especially in 2020 with everything that was going on, wanted to be able to protect his family. Okay, whatever. Now, this barricaded situation went on for a while. We've got two officers and a medic down. Well, the drone was sent in, and they actually used the drone to evaluate the situation because of the fact he was rather heavily barricaded and heavily armed. Pretty good amount of ammunition, etc. The drone saw him deceased from a self-inflicted wound that occurred right in front of the 12-year-old. They witnessed it. They were in the same room that he was in when he did it, and he revoked his own birth certificate, so, well, it happened. He did have multiple weapons. The one that they've been able to trace thus far was an AR-15 that was sent from out of state. Now, wait a minute. How did he order an AR-15 from out of state back in January if he was a prohibited possessor? if his rights had not been restored, if the judge said, no, you've got no business owning a firearm. Well, they've looked it up and it turns out it was what we call a straw purchase. Basically, he had someone else sign that it was their firearm that they were buying for themselves. Don't know what company it was that he actually got it sent from. We do know that it was sent to a local firearm store. The person who picked it up, it was an AR-15 platform lower. They got it. They purchased it. They seemed to be knowledgeable about it, and they went ahead and did it. So, despite being a prohibited possessor, he was able to get this. We come back to that old story. Is it a gun control issue or is it a criminal control issue? Well, what do we think? Someone else bought it. All the background checks in the world, not going to help. They did it over a month in advance. So that 10-day waiting period, like I know some states have, like California has like a 10 or 15-day waiting period and 42 hoops you've got to jump through and DNA and fingerprints and blood. I don't even know what they've got out there anymore. Wouldn't have helped. He was able to acquire a bunch of weapons. And again, so far, one, they interviewed the local gun store where he bought it from. And they said, oh, no, that's not who we sold it to. We sold it to this person. How it made it to him, we don't know. For all we know, it was one of the wives or girlfriends along the way that did it for him. Someone did it for him. I don't know. But there we are. All the laws in the world didn't stop the bad guy from getting the gun. Now, I want to go to the hypothetical. You hear me talk about how do we deal with this? If somebody had known that there was a bad guy who had a whole bunch of guns, would there be an incentive structure of sorts to turn him in? Maybe I call the Crime Stoppers anonymously and say, look, this guy's got a real bad temper and he's stockpiling ammunitions and weapons. You know what? He's a prohibited possessor. I'm not talking red flag laws because, well, Minnesota has all kinds of laws and they didn't help. We're still, all these laws deal with what law-abiding citizens do. But if you're not a law-abiding citizen, guess what? They're doing whatever in the blazes they want. So, once again, sad. 2 officers and a paramedic lost their lives in the line of duty. Why? Because some psycho decided to go psycho. And again, I don't think there's a law in all the books you can pass that's going to stop this. But what I would love to see is a way to take aim at some of these problem children with guns, because he was clearly known to be a problem children. Alrighty, well, let's see. Looking over in the chat, I see Mel is already in for the evening. We've got a few people following us on Rumble so far. No one on YouTube yet. Oh, well, that's okay. Like I said, we're going to be jumping off of YouTube here when we get into some of our later cases. First off, though, I want to talk about some good guys and gals with guns. Maybe a little bit of positive, because you know what? We could use some positive right now. Let's see what we've got here. Well, this one out of Denton, Texas. Gotta love Texas. A resident shoots a man who forced his way into his home. Now, the intruder broke in, was armed with a hammer. The resident tried to get him to leave, and eventually the resident was being attacked and shot the man. Now, fortunately, the intruder did survive. He got to go fly in the pretty little medical helicopter and go to the hospital, and no charges have been filed against the homeowner. Law enforcement says it looks pretty cut and dry, self-defense. Bad guy was in his house. So, pretty well clean shoot. Law enforcement is cool with it. My question is, this guy didn't have a gun. He had a hammer. Is a hammer a deadly weapon? In the hands of a violent criminal, yes, a hammer is a very deadly weapon. The only way this guy was able to survive the attack was, oh yeah, he had a force equalizer or a force multiplier to deal with the intruder into his home. He didn't do anything wrong. He wasn't going the wrong place. He wasn't a bad guy. This wasn't some kind of crazy deal gone bad. No, this was just crazy went crazy, and it is what it is, unfortunately. So, moving onwards and upwards, let's see. This one's out of Houma, Louisiana, the very next day. This resident wakes up at 5 a.m. and hears people in his house, finds two intruders, a male and a female. Now, the resident ended up firing on the male suspect, who took off on foot. Police did respond, track the suspect, as well as the female who was allegedly with him. Both the suspects were arrested on several charges, including felons, both of them in possession of firearms. Yes, that's right. When they broke into this man's house, both of them were carrying. Now, they're both previously prohibited possessors. And, well, there's a law against breaking into people's houses, too. Laws affect those who obey the law, and these people have clearly made the decision in life that laws don't count for them. That's why they break into other people's houses. That's why they carry guns when they're not allowed to. Now, I know there can be all kinds of discussion, and we can have the talk about restoring people's firearm rights. And I think there is some things we can do to work on that. I know one case right now that came across my desk the other day. Someone was asking about where to go about trying to get someone's firearms rights restored because they had made stupid mistakes when they were younger, but they were really squared away now. I'm all for that, and I think we can work down that line. But until we do, and these folks, they're still breaking into people's houses. And folks, I'll be honest with you, I saw the mug shots. Yeah, I think they're kind of messed up, but that's just a hunch. What would I know? 25 years working EMS, I couldn't spot a crackhead a mile away. No, never mind. Yeah, Hunter Biden unavailable for comment, ironically enough. But anyway, now this one here comes out of Mobile, Alabama, and it's kind of short, sweet, and to the point. Woman has her ex-boyfriend pounding on her apartment door just before midnight. He ends up kicking in the door, and he's armed with a gun. Did we not see about people? They don't believe in gun laws. They don't believe in not breaking into people's houses. Well, this gentleman, he ends up catching a round from her, and he ends up getting a pretty ride to the hospital as well. Now, my question is, a male armed with a firearm breaking into her home seems pretty cut and dry. And it was. Law enforcement's ruled it justified shoot, no problems on that. But again, we come back to, well, gee, imagine that. Like this could happen again. You know, if you don't notice a pattern here, this is, I know, the fourth, fifth, sixth we've had recently that's been an ex-girlfriend, an ex-husband, an ex-something or other breaking into someone's house. Folks, if you got crazy exes, lock and load. That's all I'm saying, because, you know, something's got to give off here. Because, I mean, I'm not saying they're going to go wacky, but if they go wacky, it's kind of nice to have that option. And here, this lady, fortunately for her, as well as I believe there was a child home at the time, she was able to make him think better of his decision of breaking into the home. It is what it is, folks. You know, we deal with a lot of these things, and tonight, you know, it's just been one of those really fun nights. And, you know, again, we lost the two police officers and the paramedic firefighter, and that part sucks. But in these three cases, a law-abiding, firearm-owning civilian protected themselves and decided not to be a victim. Now, for those of y'all watching on YouTube, which probably isn't too many, we're probably going to cut the stream off here in a minute. For those of y'all watching on Rumble, well, we're going to do some rumbling because I've got a rant or two that are coming. I know you're getting at least one good rant tonight, possibly a second one, because, well, it's been a hell of a week. Folks, all I can say is just remember, please don't be afraid of acorns. If it happens, try not to do a mag dump. Beyond that, if you're watching on YouTube, thanks. Peace out. If you're watching on Rumble, we're going to rumble a little bit.